Generation Z, generally people born roughly from the mid-1990s to the early 2010s, is increasingly visible as a force in protest movements around the world. What makes this moment distinctive is not simply that young people are protesting, they always have, but how, why, and with what tools they are doing it. The term Gen Z protests has been used to describe several large-scale, youth-led uprisings from Africa to Asia to Latin America. In this video, we will explore drivers and context of the Gen Z-led protests, characteristics of how these protests are organized, key case studies illustrating the phenomenon, impacts and longer-term implications, challenges, limitations, and unanswered questions, what this means for the future. Chapter 1: Drivers and context. Socio-economic pressures. Across many of the countries where these protests are erupting, young people face high unemployment or underemployment, restricted upward mobility, deteriorating public services, and the sense that the political system is failing them. For example, one analysis found that in many global South countries, a youth bulge, very young median age, combines with austerity, growing debt, and weak state capacity to create fertile ground for youth unrest. Surveys in more developed settings also show Generation Z is more likely than previous generations to say they've engaged in activism, online or offline, and that their key concerns include cost of living, housing, and healthcare. Political, structural grievances, corruption, nepotism, lack of accountability, democratic backsliding, or authoritarian tendencies figure strongly in many of these protests. The younger generation often feels its voice is ignored in traditional politics. In many contexts, they haven't been fully integrated into political systems, yet they carry the consequences of governance failures. Digital connectivity and generational identity. Generation Z has grown up with the internet, social media, and smartphones. Their connectivity and fluency with digital tools allow new forms of organization, communication, and visibility. For many in Gen Z, activism is part of a generational identity. They expect faster change, more transparency, less tolerance for business as usual. Trigger events and momentum, often a specific trigger, e.g., sudden austerity measures, public services collapse, social media restrictions, catalyzes latent frustration into action. Once that happens, thanks to digital amplification, the protest wave can spread. Chapter 2: Organizational and strategic characteristics. Decentralization and youth leadership. Many of these movements are not led by traditional parties, unions, or older activists, but by younger people, students, recent graduates, gig economy workers, and online activists. Leadership is often diffuse and network-based rather than hierarchical. Digital offline hybrid tactics. These protests combine online mobilization, social media, messaging platforms, gaming, Discord channels, with offline street action. Social media helps shape narrative, coordinate gatherings, share footage, and apply international pressure. However, this also brings vulnerabilities, surveillance, disinformation, digital repression. Symbolic and cultural dimensions. Young protesters often draw on cultural references, music, memes, gaming culture, slang, to frame their message and build identity. The visual digital environment is important. Protests are not just physical but mediated, shared globally, and seen by peers abroad. Scholars argue this amplifies both the reach and risk of such movements. Broad grievances, but local specificity. While common themes emerge, jobs, education, equality, services, each national movement has a specific context. E.g., in one country the trigger was a social media ban, in another it was electricity, water outages, in another corruption and sport event spending. Chapter 3: Case studies. Nepal, September 2025. In Nepal, protests dominated by Gen Z-aged youth erupted after the government banned major social media platforms, coupled with widespread frustration over corruption and nepotism. The protests rapidly escalated, leading to the resignation of the Prime Minister. Morocco, late September–October 2025, a group called Gens 212 Inches, referring to Morocco's country code, used social media platforms like TikTok, Discord to organize protests across multiple cities. The demands: better public services, education, healthcare, questioning government spending, e.g., on sport rather than social welfare. The protests resulted in arrests, government responses, and widespread media attention. Madagascar, September 2025. In Madagascar, young people protested dramatic shortages in electricity and water, particularly in urban areas where the median age is very young, approximately equals 19. Young people mobilized using social networks, demanding accountability and infrastructure improvement. Other regions similar patterns have been noticed in Kenya, Indonesia, Bangladesh, and Paraguay. For example, in Kenya, youth protests included music, murals, and street art as integral to mobilization. Chapter 4: Impacts and Implications. Political consequences. In some cases, governments have responded by dissolving cabinets, resignations of officials, or announcements of reforms. For instance, Nepal's government change, Madagascar's government dissolution. Even when not immediately successful, these movements change the visible power dynamics. Youth are no longer only spectators. Institutional pressure and reform potential. The protests force governments to reconsider service delivery, education, healthcare, utilities, and political inclusion of younger generations. The fact that young people mobilize globally means reputational risks and pressure from outside as well. Changing nature of protest. These movements may mark a shift in how protests are organized: rapid digital coordination, less reliance on formal organizations, greater fluidity, cross-border inspiration. This could weaken older models of protest, labor unions, formal parties, and require states to adapt. Generation shift in expectations. Generation Z appears less willing to accept incremental change or to wait for traditional political processes. Their expectations are shaped by globalization, digital media, climate change, and job precarity. This may create structural tension: aging institutions versus a younger citizen base. Chapter 5: Challenges, Pitfalls, and Open Questions. Sustainability of movements. Many protests erupt suddenly, but maintaining momentum, translating street energy into institutional change, or building a lasting organization, remains difficult. Without organization or a coherent strategy, gains may be short-lived. County optation and limit. Scholars caution that youth uprisings can be co-opted by older elites or derail into middle-class resentment rather than structural transformation. Also, movements may be reactive to triggers but lack long-term programmatic vision. Repression and risk. Young protesters face heavy repression, arrests, surveillance, and digital tools of control. Digital organizing brings visibility but also vulnerability. What about rural, peasant populations? Many Gen Z-led protests are urban-based. Some question whether they engage broader society, rural, older workers, informal economy, or whether they remain somewhat narrow in social basis. Measuring long-term outcomes. It's too soon to assess how many of these protests will lead to lasting structural change, e.g., improved public services, new political inclusion, vs being episodes of unrest. Monitoring will be needed. What this means for the future. The rise of Generation Z-driven protest may signal a new era of generational politics. Younger citizens who expect faster, technology-enabled accountability, who are connected globally, who see less room for compromise. For governments and institutions, this means adaptation, improving responsiveness, digital engagement, and youth inclusion. For activists and organizers, digital fluency will remain critical, but so will linking online channels to offline organizational capacity. Sustainability matters, not just momentary disruption. For viewers or listeners, if this is turned into a YouTube piece, the story is one of global interconnection. What happens in Morocco may inspire youths in Nepal. Digital tools create a common language of dissent, but local specificities remain key. Generation Z's rising presence in protest movements reflects deeper changes: economic insecurity, digital connectivity, generational identity, and dissatisfaction with governance. The Gen Z protests are not uniform. They span continents, causes, and styles, but they share certain patterns. Whether this wave becomes a sustained generational realignment or a series of episodic eruptions remains uncertain. What is clear? Young people are increasingly refusing to be spectators. If you like this video, hit the like button and subscribe. Now, to summarize everything. Across the world, from Nepal and Morocco to Kenya and Madagascar, Generation Z has become the driving force behind new waves of protest. What's unique is not just their age, but their methods, mindset, and digital power. Why it's happening: economic pressure, high unemployment, inflation, and poor services leave young people frustrated. Political corruption, many feel trapped in systems dominated by older, corrupt elites. Digital fluency, Gen Z uses TikTok, X, and Discord to organize faster and more effectively than previous generations. Global awareness, they're inspired by peers worldwide. A protest in one country can spark another overnight. Common traits: leaderless and decentralized, no single figurehead, organization happens online in networks. Mimetic culture, they blend memes, music, and gaming aesthetics into activism. Hybrid movements, online campaigns lead to real-world protests, and vice versa. Cross-border influence, shared hashtags and videos unify separate national struggles. Major case studies: Nepal, 2025, Gen Z protests against corruption and internet restrictions toppled the Prime Minister. Morocco, 2025, Gen's 212 inches youth demanded better education and healthcare. Madagascar, 2025, protests over water and power shortages forced the president to flee. Kenya, youth artists and activists used music and street art to challenge government corruption. Outcomes and challenges: some protests led to government resignations or policy changes. But sustaining momentum remains difficult. Many movements fade without long-term organization. Governments now face digitally mobilized generations that are harder to silence. The bigger picture: Gen Z's revolutions mark a new chapter in global activism, one driven by economic frustration, digital solidarity, and a demand for real change. Whether this becomes a lasting political transformation or a series of short-lived uprisings remains to be seen, but one fact is undeniable: this generation refuses to stay silent. Thank you for watching.